A few years ago, I got a damaged Miata hardtop that needed a lot of fiberglass work. I repaired this and I skinned it in forged or chopped carbon fiber, if you want to use the right term for it, and I used a really cheap clear coat on this top. As you can see, over these several years, especially with this top sitting outside in the sun, the clear coat now looks terrible. A lot of it has came off, and in today's video, we are fixing that problem by using a proper, high quality, high gloss, and high build automotive clear coat. The first thing that we need to do before we spray this later in the video is strip off all of the old clear coat that's still adhered to this top to give us a nice, smooth, clean surface to spray our new coat onto. Let's get started with that. So now I'm going to go ahead and use the sander to clean off all of my old clear coat and also smooth out the resin surface on top, just to make this absolutely as smooth as possible for when we go ahead and coat it again. I'm going to use this palm sander. If I had a dual action sander, it would probably make this faster and make it come out a little bit better, but I don't have one of those, so I'm going to use this palm sander here. And you want to start with as light of a grit as possible when stripping off paint. So I'm going to start with 80, which is on the slightly more aggressive side, but I do want to sort of wear into that resin a little bit and make that a really nice fresh surface on this part as well. But you want to start as light as possible so you don't dig too far into the carbon fiber unless you really want to. So I'm going to go ahead, use this thing, and we'll show you results as we go. As another note, it's important to wear a respirator when you're sanding off clear coat, especially if there's a chance of digging into any carbon fiber. And it's a good idea to wear gloves, long sleeves, so you don't get covered in stuff. And yeah, just wear your protective equipment. You won't regret it. All right, so using this 80 grit here, it looks like it is doing the job. On areas where there is still clear coat, I definitely have to focus a lot more than on areas where there's not to smooth that out, just because that clear coat is kind of raised and where it's chipped off obviously is a little bit lower than where there is still coat. All right, so I got about this far with the 80 grit, and then I decided I wanted to try 50 grit on this side here to see if it will strip off the clear coat easier and also do a little bit of work on the resin. I found over there that that 80 grit wasn't really getting into the resin very well and flattening it out, so I'm going to try this 50 and we'll see how it goes. All right, so now I got this top all sanded down with 50 grit paper. As you can see, there are imperfections in the surface of this top, and this is because I did a wet layup on this, which means this was not a vacuum formed top. I basically put the carbon fiber on there and sanded it. But yeah, that's what we're working with here. I'm going to take this top off of this car, and this is going to be the first time this top's been off in probably 4 years, so it's actually going to be pretty interesting to see this car without the hard top on it. But we're going to move this into my garage so I could work on this later when it gets dark, and then we're going to go from there. All right, so now it's the next day and I put some black epoxy on this hardtop. I did this to try to fill in any of the voids. However, I don't think this worked very well because it looks like it bubbled up where all of those voids are. So I'm going to sand this all off, sand the back of this, and then we'll keep stepping it down. Also, I made some custom integrated gloves and shirt here. Whenever you're sanding carbon fiber like this into the fiber, it does get pretty itchy, so I'm trying to avoid that. All right, guys, so now I went ahead and sanded this down with a bunch of grits, starting at 50, then doing 60, 80, 120, 180, and 220. And basically what I'm doing there is getting the surface as smooth as possible. Now when I rub my hand over it, it does feel super smooth, which is awesome. The next thing I'm going to do is look it over, make sure I didn't miss any spots, and then I'm going to put a little bit of black paint on all the areas that I went through. Last time I did this, there were some bare spots that I touched up with paint. This time there's a little bit more because last time I sanded it down basically as much as I can, and this time I needed it even a little bit smoother, so I went a little bit farther. So yeah, next step, clean it up, paint these areas, and then we'll be ready to spray it with a proper automotive clear coat. All right, I've got a pretty serious mess on my hands with all my tools out, but I just cleaned up this top and I sanded this down to about 220 grit sandpaper on my power sander, which gave it a really smooth finish. And then I wiped this thing down with some isopropyl alcohol. That's a good cleaner to remove grease, and it also evaporates quick and leaves you behind a nice clean surface that should be ready to paint. Once we bring this thing to the paint booth, I'll see what they recommend there, see if they clean it with anything else, but for now, I did that, and this top is looking good. You could also see that there are a few areas on the top that I did touch up with paint. I tried to make this look sort of random with the paint to match the chopped carbon fiber look of this top, and I think it's going to look really good clear coated. I am super excited for this top to be back to its old glory. Now that the top itself was prepped, I masked off the window and brought it to where my friend works, which had a paint booth that they were letting us use, where we finished masking off the top and got it all ready to be sprayed. Before spraying the top, we wiped it down with a grease remover and gave it a final prep for clear coat. This ensured that we would get the absolute best adhesion and that we wouldn't have any issues with that clear coat bonding onto the resin and carbon fiber surface. Then we gave it a final pass with a blowgun to get any leftover dust and debris off to make sure it was absolutely mint and ready to go. Alright, so now we're here at the spray booth to actually clear coat this top. I'm fortunate enough to have access to a spray booth, and my friend's gonna help me out with spraying this professionally this time. The reason I'm not doing this video as a how-to is I know it's harder for people to get into a spray booth, but I do want to talk about the clear coat that we're using in this video because it's very important that you use something more like this versus a cheap clear coat like I used the first time. So the first time I used a Rust-Oleum, just single part clear coat out of a spray can. That was very generic and not made for automotive application. And like I said, it was one part, so not an epoxy. These clear coats don't hold up as well, especially in sunlight and heat. So that is not what I would recommend using on any exterior automotive part. What we're going to be using on this hardtop this time is USC 40, which is a two-part automotive clear coat that should hold up way better in the sun and the heat, and it also should look really good. It also has the benefit of being high build, so we'll be able to fill in all the pores in this hardtop from the carbon fiber job that I did to fix that and make it look great. Next, it was time to spray the top. Jake did all of the hard work here, so I can't really take credit, and he is the expert, but I did pop in a few times to get clips for you guys. You could see that he's doing really nice overlapping paint strokes and that he does a great job spraying the clear coat on nice and even. You can see that there are still some imperfections in the surface of the hardtop, which I'll get into in a minute since this is 100% on me. There's something that I should have done differently initially on this top, so let's talk about it. Initially, Jake sprayed 6 coats of clear coat onto this top about 10 minutes apart, and the top did look great, but there still were some surface imperfections. To fix this, we initially sanded down the top to try to smooth out all of those imperfections the best that we could. Typically, this would be part of the process anyway, but we went more aggressive with our sanding since the surface still had some voids that we were trying to flatten out. This is where my problem came in. We realized that what was happening was that when I initially skinned the top in the carbon fiber, I may not have 100% wet out the carbon fiber or saturated it all the way through with the resin. These areas were exposed when I sanded the top, putting dry or unsaturated areas at the top surface that we were clear coating. These areas were wicking in the clear coat that we were spraying on it, making it super hard to get that 100% smooth look. I'll show you the results shortly because they're still super impressive, but these imperfections are on me and my initial method that I used coating this top. I should have done another coat of resin when I initially skimmed this top, or even tried to put another coat on before we did this clear coat. I cannot say this enough. Make sure your carbon is fully wetted out before clear coating it, or you'll be in for a tough time. If you're sanding into the actual fiber itself, it probably means that there's not enough resin there, so you should fix that before you coat it. Anyway though, Jake did a fantastic job wet sanding this top, and we decided to give it another go with 6 more coats of clear to see where that left us and see if we could get any of those voids out. After letting it cure, he hit it with a dual action sander to quickly knock the clear coat down, which brings us to right here. All right, so the top has been coated twice, 2 rounds of coating and wet sanded between. And this is about what it's gonna look like buffed out. So it looks really, really good. There are some small divots still. I think what's happening is the carbon fiber underneath is actually absorbing that clear coat in. You can see back here, it looks really good. So this is about what we could expect once it's buffed down. To fix this, I think we'd either have to coat this a bunch more times and eventually get it so it stops absorbing, or just wet sand this out and then buff it. And that's what we're gonna do, because in the sun, this is gonna look awesome. This already looks a million times better than it did initially, because when I first clear coated this thing, you guys saw it, it had pinholes absolutely everywhere. And those have been, I would say, 95% eliminated. And a lot of what you're seeing here that looks like marks are gonna blend right in once it's all buffed, because those are low spots that haven't been sanded. So this is the surface that we could expect from this top once it's all done. I'm really happy with that. It's awesome to see this actually with a proper coat of clear coat on it. And yeah, it looks sweet. I can't wait to put this on the car. All right, so the hardtop now has been fully buffed. It's actually been about 2 or 3 weeks since that top has buffed. I brought this top up on Sally, my V8 Miata, to MiataCon, and it got a lot of attention from you guys. So thank you to everybody who checked that out. But basically, we did a final wet sand on this with the dual action sander, which removes more material than you usually would use. But since it had those pores, we went ahead and did that. And then Jake buffed this. It looks absolutely fantastic, especially in the sunlight. And yeah, the surface looks pretty much as good as it can look, given the fact that I didn't fully wet out that carbon fiber, which was a fairly big mistake on my end, but I'm really happy with the finished product and it still looks fantastic. If I were to do this again, I would definitely have done another coat of resin on this top before I sanded it down and clear coated it. Then it would have looked absolutely mint. But again, I am really happy with this top. Let us know down below what you think of it, and let me know if you have any questions on doing this sort of repair work down in the comments below. Like this video if you've enjoyed it, subscribe for more, and I hope you watch the next one.